My name's Derek, and I work for Veritas. I'm here with Chris McConaughey, who's the Short North Director of Mercy and Justice, who has been running one of our learning extension centers here out of the Short North. And we'll get to a little bit more about what that is. But I'm also here with Caleb Williams, our star volunteer. We have many people who have stepped up to help us the 3 days a week at the Short North that we're offering this. And then I'd be remiss to say we also are running LECs at our other congregations, and they look a little bit differently. But today we're mostly going to be talking about the LEC that we're running here at the Short North. And so, Caleb, thanks for making the time to answer these questions and be here with us.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
So, Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about what the LEC is and what need it's meeting right now?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so Learning Extension Center, for those of you guys who are not aware, Columbus City School District started completely virtual, and as of right now, they are still completely virtual. It looks like they actually just recently extended that into January. So we have thousands of students who are not able to go into school buildings for safety reasons for COVID. So we have that really affects and impacts families all around us, especially in Weinland Park and Milo Grogan, who I've been saying, this type of virtual approach really disproportionately affects those that are our brothers and sisters around us that don't already have the same, access to resources and supports, things like, food and lunches that are being provided by schools and Wi-Fi and things like that. So a Learning Extension Center helps to fill that gap. There's hundreds of them all over Columbus that have opened up this fall. And they open up their doors. They provide maybe breakfast, but always usually provide some lunch. They provide tutoring. They provide Wi-Fi and a safe place for students to learn while they're doing virtual school.
I'm so glad that we're doing this.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, this disproportionately affects it affects everyone, but there are some families and even neighborhoods who are getting hit harder by this. It's more challenging. And so, Caleb, you stepped up to the plate. My understanding is you have a background in education. Is that right?
Yeah. Somewhat.
Okay. Tell us about that.
So I've always enjoyed teaching young people. And that's really mainly shown itself as is being a soccer coach. So I've been a soccer coach for almost 10 years, like right after I graduated high school. But then I went to a small Christian school and I was their athletic director. And at any small Christian school, you wear many hats in one role. So I was also a PE teacher for the K through 12 that was there. So while there, I just learned that, man, I really love teaching, and that what had not been a huge eye-opening thing while I was there, I was just like, this is awesome. And so since then, I've been working towards that, taking different odd jobs that are in my stage of life that are kind of geared towards that teaching. But I'm actively attaining a alternative teaching license where I can just have my bachelor's degree in business and sports management, but at the same time have a license from the Ohio Department of Education. So that's where I'm at. I've got time on my hands because like I said, I am a soccer coach, so I coach in the evenings. But I think God's really allowed me to use this time to help out in this ministry that our church has. And I mean, it's been, I can see how God's using me, and that's a blessing because all glory to Him,
Wow. We're so grateful for you and the way God's used you to help in this ministry. So I think, and this is totally sacrilegious, that there's a special place in heaven for teachers. And I think even a more special place in heaven for teachers that are weathering the storm of COVID. This is an opportunity that I would personally run away from, but you are drawn to it.
Yeah.
And so tell us like what you're seeing and what you're noticing day to day working with these kids. Tell us more about it.
Yeah. So one thing, I started out at the very beginning, and I kind of went into it. I have some experience with the kids that I coach, and so it was such a hard few months at the beginning of the pandemic, where everybody was self-isolating, and they weren't going to school. Sports were cut out, and the thing that I noticed as soon as sports popped back up, the kids they embraced it so much because they were missing that community. They were missing the stability. They were missing the routine. And I've noticed that with the kids in school. Like maybe they don't have sports. The kids that we have here at the LEC, like all I hear is that that they'll go home and that's all they have is their home life. And so when they can come here and gain that stability that we can offer, and it's not anything as extensive as a school day, 8 hours at school and 2 lunches or 2 meals and homework, and even though it's not fun, it's still stability and it's still routine. And I think as humans, we kind of crave that because it's maybe somewhat of a security, but these kids are missing that. And so I've noticed the more consistent we are, the more they appreciate it. So today was one of the best days, and it's week seven,
yeah,
something like that. So we can see the relationships are just building. We've started a foundation, and we keep building on that. And so even though we may not be as routine or as it's our first year, so anytime you have something that's the first year, you're still like working on guidelines and policies and strategies, I guess. We're building on it, and it's working, and I think that I know that the kids are starting to appreciate it. So that's what I'm seeing.
I'm so glad that you mentioned relationship. Like it's encouraging to hear. I just feel like as a church, we talk about relationship a lot. We talk about community. One of our values and just the everything we're doing. We as a church, we really in some ways we're building relationship in some way, whether it's pointing to our relationship with God, or relationship with one another, or relationship with our neighbor. It's so encouraging to hear. Like I love, because I've watched you, right? I've seen you come in multiple days a week, and you've just gravitated towards one kind of specific student, which we don't need to say any names, but just like I'd love to hear more about how did that relationship develop. How has it been encouraging to you? Like, assuming it's been encouraging and like edifying. Like how's that been kind of a rewarding experience for you to build and to see that relationship?
So it's kind of weird, but I'm learning. The older I get, the more I've come to appreciate the sanctifying work of God. So working with his students kind of been one of those. He pushes me sometimes, but it kind of just started out because I don't know, God's kind of blessed me a little bit with that kind of patience with kids. And I've noticed it in soccer practices, and some of those kids that I coach are like difficult. But being able, like I've learned, like the more patient you are with them, the more that they appreciate that. So it's been a blessing to me because it has been showing me like, man, this is maybe a blessing that God's given me of being patient, fruit of the Spirit, but it's also challenged me to grow deeper into it. But it just being with him and seeing, I know that he has struggles, just like any kid has struggles, and, you know, and sometimes we do feel lonely, and there's so many kids that I can't even imagine right now when they're not getting that community at school, when they don't have all those other adults that are focusing on them. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I still think that sometimes school we have kids that fall through the cracks, but right now, especially when everything's virtual, it's just like, you know, maybe you have two parents, but they're working, so who's spending time with that child? And even if they are, like, maybe they have siblings that just take up way more of that parent's time. And so being able to give him that attention and be able to see that he appreciates that, and not just the attention or discipline of like, we have to get these subjects done or we have to get these assignments done, but like being able to read him and kind of see how he's feeling. I think he struggles, you know, with his feelings. Like how can he communicate his feelings well? So like being able to do that, and see that he responds so well to it is a huge blessing for me and him. And I think that's one of the things that I'm seeing from that relationship, is just more of me understanding him and seeing that he appreciates that. And he doesn't always say it, you know, he doesn't verbalize it, but sometimes through his actions, like, so it's been very cool to see.
Thanks for sharing about that.
Yeah.
I think attention that you're giving him goes so far.
Mm-hmm.
And it reminds me of the kind of love and attention we get from God our Father. Mm-hmm. And in these times when people are isolated and maybe aren't getting that kind of attention and are struggling with loneliness more than ever, it just makes the kind of ministry that you have with this kid and with this whole LEC ministry just that much more powerful. Mm-hmm. So, I love hearing about it.
Yeah.
So tell me how, when you walk into this, you walk in those doors on the first day, how did things go differently than you imagined?
Well, I think we started out with 4 kids. So not that 9 is like a huge jump, but it's definitely more than 4. I'm actually helping out with another church's LEC. So it's different because that church is in Gahanna Jefferson school district. So it's definitely more suburb, but there's also, I think, 30 kids K through 7th. So we break them up into separate classrooms, and so I had to actually experience that before I came here. So when I saw 4 kids, I was like, oh, this is going to be a piece of cake. You know, I thought it was going to be so easy. Whereas like at that one, I don't have any one-on-ones. Maybe I do spend a little bit more time tutoring a student, but the classroom I'm in is 4th through 7th grade, so those kids are pretty self-starters. And so I come here and we have, 2nd and 1st graders, and then a little bit more diversity now that we've added a couple other families, but seeing how much like attention that they need it was so different. So it really did change. Like I go there and I'm a totally different need. Like they kind of just need me to be a constant like rule giver type of deal. And while I'm here, I'm more how can I build relationship type of deal. So it's been good. Like I said, it's definitely helping me, showing me, challenging me to get better at it. And so but it's also been cool to see the volunteers that we've added as well. So we haven't just added students, we've added volunteers from the church, and I think seeing that we talk about building relationships with the students, but I've also built several relationships with the volunteers. So, and that's been cool to see, and it makes me feel a little bit more part of the church for sure.
Chris, if someone's listening right now and they're like, yeah, I don't know, maybe I want to do this, but I'm not that patient, I'm not that great with kids, but I have the time, maybe, like, speak to that person and tell them, like, should they check this out?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think there's a lot of unknowns and a lot of maybe you don't have a lot of experience dealing with kids. I think what I've even still continued to learn, because I honestly that's me. I mean, I have my own children, but in some degrees I've really never directly kind of interacted with this age group as much as I have the past 6 or 7 weeks. And I've really learned, what, kids are pretty gracious, and they're pretty like receptive, and they're your friend pretty easily. I just feel like they're just like, oh cool, I like Mr. Chris, he's here, there's something consistent happening with this adult named Chris, and I like it. I'm gonna ask him questions, I'm gonna tell him about my new shoes, and I just feel like it's not as intimidating, or as it doesn't require much more than just kind of a willingness to invest and to serve and to give up some time. I mean, at this point, I will say that, like, unfortunately, even at this point, we've had to turn away a few families that have asked, to come and join, just because we don't have the volunteer capacity, like you're saying, for more of that, like, relationship one-on-one building, especially with our younger students that really need more of a more kind of attention and time. And so we could, I would definitely encourage you to at least, you could come just once and shadow and see and, like, kind of experience what Caleb's is talking about, but also just know that these kids are very easily to love, and they're very they just want to be your friend, and I think it's the relationship part I've found is one of the easiest things to build, I just feel like it's been very rewarding even for me.
So Caleb, back to you. It's okay if you don't, but do you have any story or something you just think you'll always remember?
Well, I think it's kind of spanned the whole time, but I think it got summed up today, kind of. So with this student that I've been one-on-one with a lot, I can see that, like, inner war turmoil type of deal where there's, like, chaos, but then there's calm, and there's, you want to do something, but you don't do it. And I'm reminded of Romans 6-8 type of, where it talks about that, like, that battle that happens within. And so this student, there's times where I can just see it in his eyes, like, he is calm. He's loving. He says, very, like, things that you want to, I probably don't even say to people that are, it's so sweet, so nice. And then there's times where it's just crazy, everything just falls apart sometimes, it seems like. But then he comes back, and, like, at the end of the day, he's like, Mr. Caleb, can you walk me to the van? And before he gets into the van to go to daycare, he gives me a hug and he says, I love you, Mr. Caleb. And that's, like, it makes it worth it. It does. It's like you can see that he is struggling with those things. And so if I'm able to be here and I'm able to show that love and that grace that I've received from Jesus Christ, and I'm able to give that to him, and then I can kind of see, like, there is fruit in it, and that was one of it. So that'll stick with me.
Wow, what a sweet story, and what a great little reward. And I know our rewards are in heaven for this kind of thing, but those are just moments that can just fill your tank.
Yeah.
So Well, I think those are all the questions that I wanted to answer, but is there anything else that either of you wanted to say about the LEC and your experience with it?
I mean, the only thing is just listening to you, Caleb, is just, and I've told you this before, just like how much just I admire you and your willingness to just serve, like as a body, and even as kind of leadership. Like we love, seeing just the members and the tenders of the church really just have a heart to serve, and just hearing. I mean, I forgot that you're actually serving at another LEC the same week and doing the soccer practice, and I just really think that's beautiful, and I'm so glad that we're spending this time and sharing this story just as kind of just an example of also our other value of service, and just like, I guess it would just be almost like a challenge or just a question to those who are listening, like what is God putting on your heart in your path, of life, where you can serve. And and dare I say, even sacrificially serve. Not serve only on the fringes or out of the abundance that you have, but serve where it might hurt a little bit. You might have take some of your time. I just can't imagine just the other things you could do with your week that would be comfortable. So I just appreciate you, and I admire just also just seeing firsthand the relationship that you're talking about and building. It encourages me. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, I totally thank you for that. Those kind words, like it does give me a little bit more in the tank. Sometimes it feels like you give so much, and you got to be careful that you're making sure that you're getting the right stuff put back in. So spending time in the Word and spending time in Christian community and stuff like that, it's so helpful. I would say, like, I know what I've seen, and with the kids that we have, and the fact that there's people that still want to come, and we just need, the harvest is plentiful, but the harvesters are few, type of deal. So it's like, let's come be harvesters together. Let's help and serve, and even if it's just once a month, that's once a month that those kids get just a little bit more extra care, or maybe that's an extra family that we get or one extra student, maybe. It helps. It goes a long way. So
awesome.
That's great. And one thing I'm just thinking too is I do want to mention that just is happening the last few weeks is what's been really encouraging to me is we're also reaching the families, and we're reaching Weinland. I mean, so I don't know if we've said explicitly, but we are, targeting Weinland Park Elementary School just for the sake of just kind of clarity and having a vision. We're really trying to reach that school that's just right across the street, and a lot of our members, are in the neighborhood and have kids that go there. And what's been really beautiful is also it's not just your relationship with the said student, but the relationship with the moms and the families that we're really starting to build, where they're asking for prayer, and they're coming to us with sharing their burdens of their week, and it's becoming bigger than just the mornings we're open for schoolwork. It's much bigger than that.
Yes, thank you for reminding me of that. It's a detail about the LEC that I forgot to mention. So before we go, I want to pray for you guys. Father, as we entered this season of COVID, this pandemic, it was hard to have an imagination for what ministry could look like. It was hard to even want to do ministry. And then you gave us this. You gave us the imagination and the willpower and the energy and the people like Chris and Caleb and the many others who are sacrificially serving kids in the neighborhood. And so I thank you that once again you have provided in ways that I didn't anticipate, but I should expect. And Lord, you are just who you say you are. You are a Lord of abundance, and you've given us so much. So thank you for your grace. I pray that you would show favor to us as we try to reach those families in these neighborhoods, at all our congregations, out in the hilltop, and out in Hilliard, Lord, that we would be a light to people. And so I thank you for the opportunity, and I pray that you would bring many more in our doors as we continue with this LEC. In your name, amen.
Amen.
Amen.